the recording so that everybody knows. So your only focus this week is the final, and the final is your story, your art, right? So if your focus is on, Sanjay, I think you mentioned about something about learning about how to eat better and how to healthy habits and what that means, right? I think part of your student survey, by the way, student surveys are going to be all marked, and so is the final visual. So your grades up till this point will be done today. So today is the time to focus on finding inspiration and creating, right? Creating the habits that you want, and hopefully ones that you can continue throughout this unknown experience to keep yourself a little bit balanced, a little bit sane, and maybe even find bits of joy and pleasure in your everyday life. How are you finding bits of pleasure? Natalie, how are you finding bits of joy? What are you doing on an everyday basis that keeps you grounded in, the idea that living a fulfilling life?
For me, as I said, I live in South Boston, and for me, what really keeps I need to go outside and get some fresh air.
Yeah.
I need to take that walk. And sometimes I find myself walking like for 5 hours, 5 miles before I come back and say, okay.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, I think even if usually I just sit outside to do some stretch or something, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes in the morning. And if I don't have it, it's a whole other day that
Mm,
I don't want. I'm
I
not very pleasing to be around, especially for my family, the poor ones that have to endure me. Well,
agreed.
right. Um, all right. Sanjay, how do you persist through this time?
I usually just sit on my balcony. I like to people watch, so I just watch the people that walk by, or I just sit down and read a book.
Yeah. Are you an extrovert? Like,
No,
okay. All right. So
more of an introvert.
people watching from a distance.
Yeah.
That's good. At least now with Corona, this is something that you can in fact do. Um, Lovely. Okay. So I'm going to share the first thing that we looked at in this course was the work of Dora Salcedo and how she put a crack through the museum floor, right, into the cement. And so this is her talking about that experience. The piece is called Shibboleth, and it talks about that idea of cracking the structure and really recognizing those deep scars that are within our history. And the symbolic way, right? Like what she did. So here's her discussing that. Good morning, Alberto. Let me see if I can do that.
Shibboleth is a piece that refers to dangers at crossing borders or to being rejected in the moment of crossing borders. So I'm making a piece about people who have been exposed to extreme experience of racial hatred and subjected to inhuman conditions in the first world. This piece is trying to introduce into the turbine hall another perspective. And the idea is that we all look down and maybe try to encounter the experience of these people that I've been referring to, somewhere hidden within this deep division that is being generated in the turbine hall. The presence of the immigrant is always unwelcome. The presence of the immigrant is seen as jeopardizing the culture of Europe. Europe is being seen as a homogeneous society, democratic society that has learned through centuries of development, has learned to resolve the issues through dialogue. And if that is the case, then where do we place these outbreaks of racial hatred? So I think the society is not so homogeneous and is not so democratic. And there is some people that are experiencing that. So wherever the world, the earth opened in the first world, there is mesh, keeping people out or inside, as you want to see it. Anyway, keeping people away. So it's a piece that is both in the epicenter of catastrophe, and at the same time, it is outside catastrophe. As you look in, you can see, you can get the feeling of catastrophe in there, but nonetheless, outside is quite subtle. And I wanted a piece that intrudes in the space, that it is unwelcome, like an immigrant that just intrudes without permission, just gets in slowly, and all of a sudden it's there, and it's a fairly big presence. I believe every work of art is political, because every work of art is breaking new ground, and it's in a way against the status quo. So every work of art, the nature of art is political. Abstract art, all of it is political from my point of view. My work is, because of where I come from, because I come from a country that is in the middle of a conflict, very intense war, and I have always seen conflict, and I have always seen the world from the other perspective, from the perspective of the defeated people, not from the perspective of the triumph. It's not, I don't see this piece as an attack. I just think that it is a reminder. I want to bring into the consensus of everything is well, we are all happy. I want to bring a question mark, a disruption, not only in the space, but also in time. What is it before and what is going to happen after? There is a quote by philosopher Theodor Adorno that I find it amazing. He said that we should all see the world from the perspective of the victim, like Jewish people that were killed with the head down in the Middle Ages. So he wonders, what is the perspective of a person that is agonizing in this position? So I just want that perspective. The world upside down. What it is like to see the world from down there. So once the show is over, it will be seared. It will remain under the floor, and it will be seared. So a permanent scar will always be the turbine hall, as a memory, and as commemoration of all this life that we don't recognize, that for us are like ghosts anyway. So in that way, the memory of the piece and the presence of the people that we don't want to look at, the presence of this life that we don't want to acknowledge, to have pretty much the same character, just a vague memory.
So this spoke about the piece that we looked at the very beginning of the course in the first week, right? That crack in the middle of the museum. The symbolic version behind it, the reason behind it of having a crack through this very pristine floor. It's very much like, like recognizing the social structures of people who want to patch things up on the surface or get rid or erase history, right? It's a very interesting thing now where they're getting rid of, obviously, the Confederate sculptures and Confederate paintings, right, of people from the Confederacy. And it's a sort of simple band-aid to get rid of the sort of previous heroes, right, that we that people have put up. But it's not a real, I think it would be very interesting if they donated those sculptures to African American artists, for example, and let them change, alter, transfer, or do what they will with the bronze. And think about the shift of possibly repainting a painting, erasing a painting, sanding off a painting, right? And shifting and changing history to understand history is not something that is back there, that we seem to think that it's over or done with or something that's in the past. The history is right here. It's in the present. It's with us. It sits with us. It sits with us every day, right? You have it here with you. And in order to break that history, I mean, and Doris Salcedo is one of those artists that she very literally just breaks history. She breaks she breaks things. She breaks walls, she breaks buildings, she breaks floors. She's a sculpture artist. She's really very, very physical with her sort of destruction, but not for just the sake of destroying something. She has a philosophy behind why the crack is very, very important, right? How the crack reveals things that other people don't want to see, right? The inside of that. So I wanted to get back to her and show what she spoke about in relation to this piece. I will have this video for you. The next thing I wanted to show you today is just about sharing. Some of you, this might be an interesting project for your final. And during the time of Corona, museums asked people to replicate paintings that they found inspiring with their everyday materials. So this is what some people came up with. So this is a very interesting painting. This is sort of marriage. It's a Van Dyck painting. And here is a replica of someone trying to replicate as much detail as they can from using their everyday experience and from their everyday materials, right? So the hat is now the bowl, the blanket is now the pregnant gown. And then looking at from everyday materials that you have, this is Dali's Bending of Time. I think it's, there's a presence, memory of presence. And then someone replicating it with their lunch, right? Just a simple act, but looking at the perspective, looking at the composition of the painting, and then replicating it from everyday material. Here's somebody's pet, right? From an odalisque. Some people went very detailed and really replicated what they were seeing, but other people, it was more abstract. It wasn't just it's a Norman Rockwell. So some of you might want to play with this idea of replicating a painting. Think about why you're replicating it, what is the message behind the original painting, and why you want to bring it back to our attention. And then see and play with everyday materials. It's the stuff that's just around you that could be manipulated, that can make something from nothing, right? From trash to art. This is the the Madonna with the child. Now the child, right? And this is just someone playing with their clothing. So again, so these are also very interesting, and you can photograph at the end your perspective. Here's a Roman painting of the Roman landscape with everyday materials. So that's another idea that you can go. You can look at, museums are virtually now online, and you can go to those museums. I will put a link up in my RCC, and you can go visit those museums, see if you find one that really speaks to you. You can replicate it if you have absolutely no idea what to do with your final, but most of you are well on your way. Any questions or comments, especially on the Dora Salcedo video with the crack and the way that she spoke about it, the way that immigrants come into a culture and disrupt. And there's a real, there's an importance to that disruption. Even though the local people don't want to look at it, it's still a very necessary cracking, a necessary decay, because it's not, in fact, you know, of course, everybody was an immigrant and we're a migrant. We're on this planet. It's this one ball that we've traveled on. Any comments on the video by Dora Salcedo? Because we're going to move on in a little bit to another, something for inspiration for the final project, or questions in general. Anything in terms of Dora Salcedo? Yeah, Carol. Hold on, let me see if, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I just had it to it, so I just got your last piece of it. So can you just run a little bit what was said about
so the conversation was about her piece, the one that we saw at the very beginning in the first week, where it was a crack through the institution, the museum. But she spoke about it in such a way where her work specifically deals with looking at the perspective of the victim, rather than the perpetrator or the triumphant warrior, right? So much of our culture pays homage to the victor and the triumphant ones, and we build and we paint about them, and we make sculptures about them. But she's looking at it from point of view of millions and millions of untold stories of the, especially from the immigrant perspective. And it's oftentimes quite devastating. Her work is quite, for example, she created a table, and the two pieces of the table that held the table together were stitched with human hair. So she had millions of little holes, and then in between them, hair that I'm not sure how she collected or sewed, but the table was joined together by human hair that was sort of holding the structure very loosely together. So her work is definitely very very interesting and very pertinent to the times that we're living in. I wanted to show you a student piece next of a student who was doing her final project, and again, she didn't have, during the whole class she was struggling and thinking, why I can't, you know, I'm not an artist. She didn't identify as that. What do I do? How do I say something tangible? And then she came up with this incredible video that she asked two of her roommates to help her with this video. They shot it, I think, in the bathroom of the school. But again, it's something very, very powerful. She was dealing with oppression. That was her concept and her theme. So here's her work. Any comments on that one?
Trying to figure out what she was doing.
So initially it was right there was two characters. One was initially wiping away the original existing tattoos that the boy had or the man had. And then she was thinking about the labels that people put on each other. And specifically, this was the white girl projecting labels onto the Asian man. And then labeling him in a way that I don't know how they came up with the labels, like why, what words and why, but it's often the words that are of judgment, right? What are some of the words that you saw? So there was something like
I
worthless,
saw skinny.
yeah, get too skinny. There was illegal, right? Um, there were all kinds of projections, and as the more that she added, the more he tried to wipe them away. But she sped up her process, repeating the letters more and more and more, so that and then I found his breathing very interesting. The more she did it, the more, if you followed his stomach and his breathing, it got more and more tense, right? As she was projecting these kind of statements and comments on them. But the lighting was beautifully done. The soundtrack that she chose to accompany the video was very interesting. Um, yeah, it was just a very powerful piece. It left most of us in tears in the class, which was always an interesting response from students who try to mask, their emotions. It was really something specific. It was a powerful piece. Any comments on thoughts? So one of the last things I wanted to, and this is for those of you who need to take a break, right? So this is the piece that was by Miladon Salah. He was an artist from Belarus. I can't pronounce his name, but he talked about how important rest and leisure were to the creative process. And so in the 70s, he criticized American artists for being all about production, because in the US it's about sales and about making the money, and because we're in the capital structure. But for him, he said that time of leisure is so important and so worthwhile, especially for creative people, that he criticized the U.S. artists for not taking a break. So this is him on the right from the 60s or 70s, and this is a contemporary artist, Jessica Siegel. Just like the artist repeated art from museums, this is an artist that repeated his work in Brooklyn during the first part of Corona, which again is something to think about during Corona. It would probably be the best if we could all just sleep for 2 years, right? If we could hibernate for another 2 years, the planet would have time to recuperate, recover from our mistakes, and we would, wake up and this whole virus would be done. Unfortunately, we can't do that. But the more naps that you can take, the more you can take care of yourself, the more leisure you can have, the more even a slight balance to your day, right? To get rid of stress is very, very important. So for some of you, this might be the piece. Some of you might want to lie down. And if you have someone around, have them photograph you sleeping, document the process, and that might be enough, right? There's a whole philosophy behind it. So if you are interested in this piece, I want you to look up this piece and see what he wrote about this piece, because there's a whole philosophy why it's super important to a creative person to think about themselves, the rest, and take care of the body before you do anything else. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention today, we were talking about psychology and how psychology is pretty synonymous with artwork, because what you put on your project or the painting that you're going to be doing, it just comes from you. It has all of your hang-ups, it has all of the beauty that you have, it has everything, right? And unfortunately, whatever comes out on the paper is it's just you. It's just that, right? All the things all the mistakes, it just has it all, and that's okay. That's part of the human condition. So it's interesting to look at artworks. If you go look at that virtual museum trip, it's interesting to look at artwork from the perspective of the artist who'd created it, and all the problems they had. So if you went to go look at a Van Gogh, right, that stuttering, so when he did the Starry Night with the jagged lines, that's just his mental illness. That's not, he wasn't doing it for the sake of beauty. We see it as beauty, but for him, it was a way to process his state of being. It was just that. He wasn't going for, in fact, Van Gogh didn't sell anything throughout his life. He made over 200 paintings that, again, didn't sell during his lifetime. It's now 50 years later that we appreciate the brushstroke, that we see the energy behind the brushstroke, that we see the beautiful colors. But during his lifetime, forget it. There was no one that loved Van Gogh during his life, besides his brother, possibly the woman that he cut his ear off for. But anyway, so this is the same article that is on Nature and the Environment. So this is Krishnamurti. I will play the subtitles, although the subtitles are critically wrong in translating his speech. So if you can just tune your ear for a second, we're going to listen to the talk, Can We Die Psychologically from the Self? And it's from, I think it's from some like the 80s, but still, of course, pertinent. Maybe even before, maybe it's in the 60s. The question came to him, can we die psychologically to the self?
Can we die psychologically to the self? To find out is a process of choiceless awareness. I wish you would quote me. However, in order to observe choicelessly, it seems we must have ended or died to the ego.
Ego, not ego.
So my question is, how can I observe in my current state of fragmentation? Is it like the eye trying to see the eye? And you have said we must be free of fear in order to observe fear. This is an impossible paradox. It is driving me mad. Please clearly clarify this issue. I will clarify the issue. Don't. Or anybody. So then it's not yours. Second hand, you become second-hand human being. If you are. So, please, that's the first thing to do. Because that distorts our thinking, you understand? We are the result of million years of pressure of other people's thinking, propaganda, all that.
All that.
If one is not free of all that, you can never find out the origin of all things. You don't lose. So my question is, how can I observe in my current state of fragmentation? You can, right? But you can observe your fragmentation. I don't know if you follow this. I'm observing myself. In observing, I discover that I'm looking at myself with certain prejudice. So I complete looking at myself, I go into the question of prejudice. Yeah? I'm aware, I become aware of my prejudice, and can I look at it without any sense of distortion, without choice, without all the rest of it, just to observe the prejudice I have. Let the story of prejudice tell me what I tell the story about prejudice, but let prejudice unroll itself. You understand what I'm saying? the image, conclusions, opinions. So I begin to discover, one begins to discover, in looking at fear, I realize that I am fragmented. That fragmentation is brought about by thought, naturally. And therefore, I begin to be aware of the movement of thought.
Thought.
So it is, what is important is not absurd fear. So my mind itself is clouded, confused. So I inquire into my confusion. Why are human beings confused? Well, why are you all confused? If you're very clear, you won't be here. And I wouldn't be here. Thank God. Because we are confused, our question is, what is this confusion? Who had created this confusion? In us and outside of us. So in inquiring or observing confusion, I begin, the movement is to be aware of the movement of thought.
Of thought.
The contradictory nature of thought.
Thought. Nature of thought.
And then the whole thing unrolls itself if you watch. The story is there, but we don't read the story. In the book, what it should say. So we're not saying it. There is the history of myself. History of mankind is myself. So, in inquiring into reading that book, I read the book, chapter by chapter, and I understand the whole book instantly. But more. That implies one has to have deep insight. I don't know. I don't know if you want me to go on into that. So look, there is confusion in all of us. It would say, I'm not confused. That's the truth. Say. Or, I have perfect relationship with another. That's equally said. So one is confused. Now, either you analyze it, the cause of it. Please follow this little bit. The cause of it, which is thought. Thought in its very nature, contradictory. Thought in its movement is divisive. As less or divisive. Thought in itself must be limited because based on knowledge, and knowledge can never be complete. Never. Right? So, let's see where we go into analytically or thought move in a particular direction to examine, which means the remembrance, the memory, the experience is observing, right? You follow me? No? All right. When you observe somebody your friend or whoever. You're observing what? Not the face, not the figure, how she looks or he looks, long hair, short hair. You're observing the image that you have built about her or him. So we are saying all that is a movement of thought based on remembrances, right? Conclusions, ideas. All that's a movement of thought.
Moment of thought.
I mean, this is obvious fact. You don't have to prove it to anyone. That thought in itself is divisive, fragmentary, partial, can never be complete. Therefore, it must create confusion. I've explained it. Can you look at this sense of confusion in oneself? Please follow me a little bit. What process? Instant, without explanation, without remember, just to look at it and see, to have an insight into it, then you can explain. Have I explained? I'll get it. Have I explained this? Insight, by the way, the very word means to have sight in the thing.
Insight.
Insight.
Insight, not
But you
insight.
cannot have insight if it is merely the response of memory. It's a organized religion is not religion. Right?
It's not religion.
So all the nonsense that goes on with it. Rituals, dogmas, theories, theologians spinning out new theories about so on. That's not religion.
Religion.
Now, what makes you say that's not religion?
It's not religion.
Is it merely a thoughtful examination of all the religions, their dogmas, their superstitions, their ignorance, their rituals, and saying at the end of it, this is nonsense. Or you see immediately
Or
any form of propaganda, pressure, and so on, that there's never religion. Either you see it immediately, and therefore you're out of it. I think that if you're merely examining various religions and then coming to a conclusion, then that conclusion will be limited and be broken down by argument, by superior knowledge, and so on. But if you get an insight into the nature of this religious structure which man has invented, the mind is immediately free of it. I don't know if you're following me.
free of it.
Like, I'll take another. If you understand the tyranny of one guru,
Tyranny of one guru.
right? Tyranny. There are tyrants, power, position, all the rest of it. They know, we don't know, others don't know. So, the tyranny, if you see the tyranny of the guru, of one guru, you have seen the tyranny of all gurus.
Tyranny of all gurus.
You understand? So you don't go from one guru to another. I'm afraid you're doing that.
All right. As you go into this final week, think about where you're doing the practice from. Think about, why creating art, what's important about art in general, why do we value it so much, what does it do for you personally, and then you can endlessly analyze who you are, right? We're an evolving thing. We're not stagnant. We're not just A, B, and C at this age, at this gender, at this whatever, right? We're evolving for the rest of our lives and into death, whatever that means. And it's an interesting ride just to be on. So I thank you for taking art history, number one. And then I'm very excited to see what you come up with this week. Any questions or thoughts? Anyone thoroughly confused after that video? Certainly Google had a terrible job at translating his speech. But if you listen to the words, if you listen to it more than once, you will be able to detect what he is saying. It's very interesting. I'm not sure I fully grasp and understand what he is saying, but there are hints and moments when the understanding becomes a little bit clearer. And it's in the moments when one is, for me, when I'm creative. So with that, I will leave you today. If there are no more questions, if there are questions, please ask. Sanjay, you were talking about how to start eating or talking about food. Is that right? In your final?
I was, yeah.
There are a few things. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh no, that was like a thought that I wanted in the final. I wanted to incorporate everything that's going on right now in my final.
Yeah. Well, think about how to narrow it down for yourself. Understand that what you create will automatically, just like Dora Salcedo said, reflect the political and social structure that we are going through right now. So you don't have to do an all-encompassing project, on the political situation. Just give yourself a little bit of a narrower focus. It's enough to just take care of you, and that has political and social implications for the rest of it, right? Because if you right now the structure is not based on individual well-being. So see if you can focus and narrow it down, just to benefit you.
Okay.
And with that, I don't know if you, there's all kinds of health expertise or whatever that you can probably go down a dark hole in. But there are lots of just increasing spices in your life, like adding, I know that I did some lemonade with some cayenne powder and maple syrup and made these spicy lemonades in the morning. And that sets your stomach up for the rest of the day. And it's this, if anyone has any recipes that really invigorate the body or make you feel good, when I drank that spicy lemonade in the mornings, it just starts the system going on a proper path, I think. And I've heard lots of good things about lemons. So lemons and spices, throw spices into your food and see how that goes.
I drink lemon water every day, like just a lemon in my water.
Right. And I think for vitamins too, for right now, to boost your vitamin system, lemons are fantastic. If you want to make it taste a little bit less sour, the maple syrup also has some good nutrients, and that'll soften the lemonade down. And the cayenne just adds a little punch. It's a little spiciness. Natalie's shaking her head. Yeah. So yeah, if anyone has some health benefits or health tips, certainly if you can put it in this discussion forum, something to benefit us all. But I found that eating, it's very interesting when we were starting the coronavirus, there were things that were just starting to bloom, like thyme, and thyme is very good for your upper respiratory system. So it's interesting that the things that are around us in nature can be the very thing that is both good for you and also medicinal. So it's one of those things. There's also these yellow flowers that were just starting to bloom at the early March. And you can put those, what is that, Natalie? What are those yellow
I
things?
think it's the dandelion.
The dandelion is super, I love it. I don't drink coffee anymore, but I drink dandelion tea all the time because the root of that, everything about the dandelion, like the things that we call weeds are probably the most nutritious things. So on top of art history, I remember the first thing that I did during Corona was that I started posting, you know, how to grow your own, anything with a root structure that you get from the supermarket, leeks, scallions. You can just put those into the ground again and it'll sprout again. So just the bottom part that we usually throw out with the root structure, if you let that sit in water, it'll keep growing and give you, you know, 2 or 3 times the amount of leeks or 2 or 3 times the amount of scallions. So anyway, greens, vegetables, if you're interested, I have some YouTube videos that you can try out. Yeah, so health is more and more very important for you right now. But also mental well-being obviously is critical. Enjoy your final projects. If you have any questions, feel free to pop in tonight for me. Understand the balance between rest and production. You know, if you want to go all out and start painting a full-size painting, feel free. If you balance it out, okay? Especially if you have work. All right. Any other questions? No? All right.
I'm all set.
What is it?
Oh, I said I'm all set.
Okay. All right. Good luck. Have a wonderful week. And I will see you. I will obviously see you on Wednesday as well, before our Friday.
Question.
Yeah.
Quick question. Because I was on the last day, but then I don't know what happened. I just start not seeing nobody and stuff like that. Were we supposed to draw one another or something like that?
We did do on Friday, we did an exercise where we were drawing one another, and that was more for discussion forum. So remember that the discussion forum is not as much points as the coursework. As long as you have the coursework in, Carol, the discussion forum material, like the drawings, will be added extra, but they will not take away from your grade. Okay, so you don't have to stress if you missed an exercise, for example, that we did in class. That's fine. If you're interested and excited about that, you're always welcome to maybe, I don't know if anyone else is interested in the class, you can meet during your own time over Zoom or whatever platform you have, and you can always draw yourselves, draw each other. I mean, even if you get together with family, you can always sit in front of the screen and try to sketch just like you did. You know, you have the map now in your head, just the proportions are there. But when you
I was trying. I was gonna do it yesterday because I took off from work. I had to rest.
Good.
Yesterday.
Good.
So I was just doing some catch up work yesterday, and resting in between. So that wasn't one of my thing I was doing, but said I'm gonna do like either draw my son or I do a picture of myself.
Yeah. So you
know,
if you, yeah, we did it in a video class because we were, you know, that's an easy thing to be looking at, but you're welcome to do it from watching your family members. You can do it certainly from a photograph. But if you enjoy being with another person, it's nice to have a conversation, and maybe friends that you haven't seen in a while. You can always, you know, video Skype or whatever you use, whatever platform, and it's nice to look and see and try to draw. Don't judge it. Don't, if it's not coming out like that person, do not worry about that. It's just a practice. It's a practice of sitting down, looking and sketching and seeing what comes, looking at the light, looking at the medium and the dark, and then eventually the face will come just from looking at light, medium, dark, right? The dark around the sockets, the dark underneath the nose. It'll, the more you look at, the more you'll see and the more you'll be able to draw. So that's just a practice if you're interested in doing that, to continue.
okay. Because I remember what you taught us. Yeah. From that.
Yeah, I think now these proportions, you know, 5 eyes, you're always going to remember, like, there's 5 eyes, there needs to be a space in between. Yeah, they're just you know, and they're, anytime that if you get lost online, there's a million resources of how to measure out the proportions of the face. For the final, I'm going to send out a schedule. I would like if there's a possibility for all of you, for the 17 of you, to be able to see each other's work. So I have 2 slots on Friday, one in the morning at 9:30, the other one in the evening at 6:30. And those of you who can't go in the morning, it would be great if you can go in the afternoon. If you, for some reason, and this is for everybody who's going to view this later, if you absolutely can't make it on Friday, then I need to make an appointment with you so that you can present your final to me in an alternative time. Okay, so so it's not only about creating something or doing a final. On Friday, we're going to share that final with one another. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And with that, unless there's anything else, I'm going to let you get to work.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for the presentations. They were very insightful. Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's my pleasure as always. Have a good day, guys.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.